Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to our panel about growing your community in VR with integrity and trust. I'm Muddy Kyle, and I'm your moderator, and I'm so happy to be here. This is a topic that's really close to my heart. I've been playing online games since I was in middle school, so I know fully well what it's like to want safety in a virtual space. I'm really lucky to be here today with three incredible panelists who are truly at the forefront of making our virtual worlds safer. So I'll start with a bit of an introduction. I'd love to hear from each of you your name, your title, which company you're with, and then if you can sum up what integrity in VR means to you in one word. I will kick us off. So my name is Muddy Kyle, and I am a game producer at Meta with our Oculus Studios team. To me, integrity means inclusion. I will kick it off to Josh.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Josh Buxbaum. I'm the co-founder of Web Purify. And for me, I think the word comfort comes to mind. The ability to make players feel comfortable, feel at home, feel safe, right? That's really our mission. So yeah, comfort.
I love that. Comfort is huge in VR across the board, and I love to hear it here. John?
That absolutely resonates on this end as well. Thanks again for having us, Muddy. My name is John Connell. I am Head of Business Development over at Modulate. And if I had to boil it down into one word, safety would be the word.
Yeah, my name is Simon. I'm Director of Business Development at Hive. And if I had to boil down what integrity in VR means to me, I'd really have to say it's trust. We want players to have a fun experience, and they need to trust that platforms are going to help keep them safe.
All right, thanks so much for answering that, guys. And I'd love for each of you to go through your solutions and talk about what you offer for moderation and integrity in VR.
Sure. So we're Web Purify. We've been in the content moderation space for 16 years, moderating text, images, videos, 24/7. We approach that with a combination of AI and live teams. Specifically for VR, though, we recently launched our new VR moderation studio, which is something we're extremely excited about. We have a very large human team in-game, 24/7, monitoring these communities. But what's really interesting, because this really is a learning curve for us, is these moderators have significant impact beyond just keeping the community safe. We've found that they're acting now as ambassadors. So when new players come and they're a little disoriented, our players act as friendly helpers, we call them, to help orient those players. And it really helps with player retention, right? Because people leave real quickly if they can't figure it out. And then we're essentially a QA team because we're in the game 24/7. So if there's a technical issue, we can alert the devs pretty quick. And we do these roundtables every month where we provide feedback like, what are the common pain points among players? So having those live teams in there, obviously the main goal is moderation, but they've had significant impact beyond that.
I love it. As a game producer, I'm so appreciative of teams that are actually in the game and really experiencing them. John?
Absolutely. At Modulate, we are offering a proactive voice moderation platform that goes in and identifies the worst harms that are happening and then allows for studios to address those harms. Different than speech-to-text technology that will transcribe voice chat or legacy player reporting infrastructure that will oftentimes miss the most egregious, nefarious activities that are happening because the onus is on the players to report that bad behavior. We identify it with AI/ML, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and what that means for us and for our customers is that we're now able to provide visibility into more than 30x the bad behavior than they even knew was happening in games for VR studios like Rec Room and Gun Raiders. And longer term, we also work with their moderation teams to basically figure out how it is that we can autonomously replicate some of these actions that their mods are taking, further reducing the impact that really is responsibility on the shoulders of the studio and making that environment a safer and inclusive space for their players.
That's amazing. That visibility stat that you bring about 30 times more is always so astounding to me. It's such great work. Simon.
Yeah, well, at Hive, we offer cloud-based AI solutions, and these solutions effectively help companies automate the full process of automation, right? In days past, you had the issue of tons of people sitting in a room trying to moderate content. And as we progress today, and especially in the VR space in particular, the real-time aspect of moderation is going to be particularly important. In particular with Hive, we really think about this from a couple of different perspectives, right? Stakeholders are really important for us. And so when we think about moderation, we try to be a thought partner with our clients and think through, who are the stakeholders? Who are we moderating for, right? Are we moderating for players? Are we moderating for advertisers? Are we moderating for the internal, stakeholders within the company, right? And so we try to partner with companies and really, help them think through best practices and how they should be, forming their trust and safety guidance.
I love that. There's so many teams that are involved when it comes to moderation and integrity, and that kind of transparency and visibility across them is amazing. I want to move on to our first question. So historically, VR has been grounded in games. What challenges do you feel that legacy presents to moderation in VR?
I think being grounded in gaming comes with its own challenges, right? So gaming historically is extremely competitive, anonymous, and can lead to some pretty toxic interactions, right? And so with being rooted in gaming comes with its own challenges. Now you add VR and the variables that come with VR, this heightened sense of presence or heightened sense of reality, people's ability to sort of cross personal boundaries, if you will. So that adds a whole other layer of concern from a moderation standpoint. That it creates a bunch of challenges beyond the initial challenges that came with just gaming in general.
Yeah.
But then you add the VR, and then it's more complicated.
Yeah, for sure. It almost feels like a whole different problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. To Josh's point, if you dig and you uncover the layers there, right, it's an entirely new way of expressing oneself in a virtual environment relative to the way that you might engage in a 2D environment. With your phone screen, maybe it's a console game that you're playing, a computer screen that you're taking a look at, where chat, for example, was the primary mode of conversation, voice as well. But in an immersive environment, you now, on top of voice, have player-to-player interaction. And so from a studio perspective, the various principles of how do you moderate now physical attribution, whether that's one player hugging another, or in some cases giving the middle finger, right? There are unfortunate realities around how it is that some of these systems can now be abused. So putting into place processes and systems to address the ways in which players will engage is going to be particularly important moving forward.
Yeah, and I think Josh and John both alluded to this, but there's this idea of sort of the proximity of the engagement, right? In the VR space, the nature of that engagement happens up close and center. And I think for us, the way we think about this is, how is VR going to develop? And specifically, are people going to be sharing content in a new type of way? And that engagement, you could have one VR player sharing files, right? You could have them sharing videos directly to another player. And so we think about this and what is that marketplace of VR going to look like? And within players actually engaging with each other, what types of content and novel ways of sharing content will they actually do that? And how can Hive, help companies think through that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of want to go with you for this next question. Thinking about ways to do that, how are humans and AI going to work together to fix this problem? I know we have a range of tooling here between the three of you, from humans to AI, so I would love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So, humans play, a very crucial role in the process of building AI models, right? Humans are always going to be required to build models, to train data, to label things. And humans are very good at understanding subjective, more subjective tasks, right? When people, you ask a person looks upset, right? Is a person angry? That's probably a cue that a human is more apt to describe and identify, versus AI models that are more focused on objective, is there nudity, is there violence, are there things of that nature in the video or the text, right? And so I think humans are going to play a big role in the component where subjective human context is important, and AI will probably play a larger part in sort of the more rote moderation tasks, like identifying, gory items or blood and things like that. Right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think humans at the edge will deal with the outlier situations, and then I think of AI as sort of the compute and scaling layer that allows for all of this to actually work. At Modulate, we think about the problem statement from the angle of identifying all of that bad behavior that's happening, the millions of instances, in some cases hundreds of millions of instances of nefarious content in a given game. And what we can do is prioritize it and stack rank what's happening where across the various categories of harm, and then determine what thresholds of detection need to either A, be autonomously moderated and take action on, or B, shared with a human in the loop to then review that engagement and determine, is it necessary to apply a strike, a ban, a mute, or some other form of remediation.
Yeah, I think historically, it's important to know this is new tech with new challenges, but the way we've attacked, we at WebPurify, again, doing this 16 years, we've encountered new types of challenges, whether it be text, images, video, and now VR. And so it's important to say, okay, don't throw out the stuff that works, right? We basically combine what's been working and then add new layers. And historically, AI and humans have been the most effective 1-2 punch at moderating this sort of stuff. And so, as these guys have pointed out very aptly, AI is real time and scalable in a way that humans can't necessarily act. But the AI, assigning risk scores and then sending that to the humans to further evaluate context is really important because, AI can't play games, right? AI can't understand the culture of play. And some of these games have their own nuanced subcultures, right? So you need the humans to get that piece, to understand the subcultures of the game, the nuance, the context. But absolutely, AI is essential up front. So yeah, the two as a combination would be really powerful.
I love it. I feel like the AI is like so integral to getting the job done, but also the humans are so integral to building that trust with the community and making sure that they feel like they're in safe hands. Yeah. Selfishly, I want to ask a question for the developers. So how can developers make smart decisions about where and how to introduce moderation to their applications?
I think having the conversation early is what we've found, and I think you guys would agree that it tends to be challenging once a game's fully developed to then have it be an afterthought, right? How do we moderate this community? Where does it fit in? But having early conversations, and we at WebPurify love taking that consultative approach very early because then everything's set up the way it should be, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, I would recommend that setting these things up early and not just where the moderators will fit in, where the AI fits in, but also reporting from players, right? At which point, what sort of tools are you going to give the players? But again, that has to be thought of very early before development and working with teams like ours to get that in place properly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely. If you have a community or you are thinking about developing a community within your game, it is almost a duty of care in some countries now to go forth and ensure that you're building safe and inclusive paradigms for those players. And you talk to studios as well, and they're starting to realize left and right that making these environments better experiences for their player base can also be good for business. If you look at the impact on churn and retention and player usage to a deeper level beyond just the surface level of you have a responsibility, a moral obligation, right, to make sure that players are having a good time.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, player experience and again, overall gaming experience is the most important thing. So I think, platforms and developers really need to listen to their ecosystem and think through, what are the types of things that their gamers are saying about their platform? Like, what are they experiencing? How is moderation affecting gameplay? Things like that. I think if these platforms listen to the players themselves, they actually might derive quite a few insights as to, what policies are maybe a little bit too restrictive and, in other areas where they might be a little bit too lenient.
Yeah, absolutely. I think listening to your players is such a key part of building that community and trust. I want to move on to our next question. What challenges do you all feel VR introduces to the tech industry's understanding of moderation? It's a tough one.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Again, there's this new variable, right? And so I think there's two challenges here, right? There are two competing forces. You've got VR, which is like an incredible technology. I mean, I remember the first time I put on a VR headset, I was blown away. You only have like a few technology firsts, right? That are epic. Whether it be your first smartphone or the first time you called an Uber, whatever it may be, right? You remember those, and it's so impactful, this technology. And the more real it gets, the more special it is, right? This heightened sense of being in the moment. And being in a space with someone else and crossing boundaries. But then the counterforce to that is the more real it gets, the more real it feels, right? And the more real it feels, now we've got a whole new moderation risk, right? So they are two opposing forces because the tech is incredible and it's a huge leap. And so we're trying to keep up and moderate that new progress. Yeah, it's challenging from a moderation standpoint, from a tech standpoint, but we're figuring it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to your point, I mean, I said earlier, I've been in online communities, for a really long time. And I thought I had seen all the forms of harassment. I thought I knew exactly how to respond, but in VR, it feels so different.
It's a whole new world.
Yeah.
It really is, yeah.
For sure.
It's absolutely surreal. And you think about to the earlier conversation of new paradigms for player engagement, right? If you have people now able to sort of interact and you've got new forms of signaling that are new bad behaviors, you have to figure out how to capture and identify and ingest that data and then take action on that data, right? So from sort of the old school methodology of thinking, well, maybe I can just mute players. I'm just going to turn off my mic entirely. That, in many instances in virtual environments, ruins the experience. And so coming up with new methodologies of addressing these bad behaviors is, I think, going to be one of the biggest challenges that VR studios have to face moving forward.
I love that. Being able to, highlighting that muting is actually detrimental to the experience of co-presence. I think it's a huge important part of this. And being clever about how to solve for that is going to be key.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's actually a good point. This idea of, with moderation, we don't want to sort of be too restrictive. We want to nudge folks to be acting appropriately and nudge good behavior. And so at Hive, we take the approach of thinking through more creative ways of, instead of explicitly banning someone, right, trying to incentivize good behavior. And I think VR presents a unique opportunity to actually incentivize good behavior. Some games have gamified specifically the process. When you're better in the game, you actually are able to access more of the game. And so I think if developers can be a little bit more creative in how they apply punishment and how they think about how to incentivize and reward good behavior, I think that'll actually provide for a better gaming experience.
I love it. Yeah, we were chatting earlier before the panel about how much we loved, those systems that really reward that good behavior. I mean, I love being like by the book, good person, following the rules in games. So I love that kind of innovative thinking. So what are some things that don't exist today you'd want to build for these new use cases?
Yeah, so we tend to, with this VR, our new VR moderation studio, we have, regular roundtables where we talk about addressing new challenges with the human teams. And one thing that comes up is, and again, this is sort of dream world, so whether it's feasible or not, it's a whole other story, but the concept of recording gameplay. And recording it strictly for moderation, it doesn't need to be retained very long. But what we find is we would like to be able to review an event and verify what happened. And right now with an Oculus, you can submit an issue, but you need to record it. You need to have a recording of it. And not always can you act that quickly to record in the moment. So if we were able to check the tape, if you will, and go back, and as the haptics get smarter, double check the gameplay with the where the contact took place, see the whole picture, and assess whether or not this was appropriate or not, right? So from our standpoint, and then again, the age-old stuff that works, things like God mode or reputation scoring, right? Those are all super important tools as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think your portion about capturing that evidence is so important because so much of the emotional damage about harassment is not having witnesses and not having people have your back, believe you, and being able to capture that evidence immediately is a huge help for that kind of issue.
Yeah. Other than proactive voice moderation, I think about the community gaming engagement loops. Today, you have communities that feel like they're not being heard. You have studios that could potentially be doing more to engage with their communities and incorporate their feedback and have tighter loops around, to your earlier point on good behavior, code of conduct engagement. How is it that you get players bought into that experience at a fundamental level so that they're more willing and interested to give back to that community and be champions for that good behavior that's happening?
Yeah, I love that. Code of conduct is super important so that everybody has a baseline understanding of how they should be behaving in that space. Simon?
Yeah, from my perspective, we see this as a global problem, right? And so our goal as we move forward is to really offer much more contextualized solutions as we develop this space. We're seeing, gamers develop in different ecosystems around the world, and so we want to be able to moderate in different languages and be inclusive of all countries that are having a gaming ecosystem. If you have players that are in China or players that are in a different country, speaking with Americans, can we, do moderation and make sure we contextually understand sort of things that might be, bad in English, but might not be bad in Chinese or might not be bad in a different language. And so understanding sort of the language nuances, specifically in the VR space, because I think you're going to see more global play happening between countries and people being able to do auto translate within the gaming ecosystem. But can we do sort of real time contextual-based moderation across players, right? I think that'll be really interesting.
I love that. Simon, like I speak Japanese and English, and there's so many times where I'm trying to like explain something, you
Yeah.
know, or like a cultural phenomenon and be like, you know, this is okay here, it's not okay there. And so that thought of like having that nuance of those different contexts, I think is super important as we think about moderation moving forward. I think that's actually all of our time today. I wish I could talk to you guys for hours. You guys are so knowledgeable, so innovative, and I've just really enjoyed this conversation with you. And ultimately, I'm just really happy we were able to have this conversation. And I think it's one that we should keep, you know, going, and we should keep evolving this discussion as we make more things and more solutions in moderation in VR.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, we'll see you at the next Connect.